So, hi. Obviously, by the sound of my voice, I am not dead, though I would not blame any of you for thinking as such. Long story short, holidays were stressful, life in general was stressful, and I just haven't had time, motivation, or just general will to live to do this. But we are going to get through it eventually, because I promised I would, and if I am nothing else, I hold to my promises, even if it kills me. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone that the next 2 chapters are just a long recap of everything that happened in the past 4. So if you want to tune out even more than usual, please do. I don't get that option. Though, fun fact, I don't remember anything I've read. Not with this book. And second matter of business, you've probably noticed from the thumbnail, but I did not do the absolutely gorgeous art this time. One of the watchers of this little series, Mr. Monical, was very, very sweet and offered to do an image or 2 for me, which I love. Honestly, you're going to get a really good look at it, but it is incredible. There is a link to him down in the description of the video, and I highly, highly, highly recommend you guys check him out. Commissions are open. Anyway, shilling over, even though he deserves every second of it, let's get into the hellhole that is Chapter 5. I hope you enjoy. Chapter 5. I woke up and remembered my horrible experience in the water. I cried and violently thrashed around. Memory can be as bad as the experience itself, and this experience was terrible. In a minute, I calmed down. I was in a hospital room. Some electrodes were attached to my head. There were doctors and nurses around me, and I recognized Peter Blair, the popular Prime Minister of England, whom I'd often seen on the news. I slammed my hand on the mattress in frustration. For 8 years, I had kept Hal's secret. My life was ruined. All I wanted was a quiet life. I didn't get it. What was I supposed to do next? I'll bet my secret's out. It is. Terrific. Some maniac will kill me in a week. How did you get to me in time? We didn't. You've been dead for 2 weeks. What? That can't happen. It did. A most remarkable story. So I went through all that for nothing? I was referring to my kidnapping and fall down from the plane. I'm afraid so. Could my anonymity still be preserved? I'll bet there's a lot of news stories about me. About 1 million if you include all languages around the world. You are discussed continuously. No anonymity. Anybody say anything bad about me? No, I have seen nothing negative. I knew I might become famous and kept myself squeaky clean. People with problems can be interesting too. Yeah, well, people with problems don't change the world. His eyes opened up. What I said surprised him. It was as if the concept was a new one to him. I saw the nurses were also staring at me. I'd said something important. What did I say? The Prime Minister turned his back and moved away a few feet. He seemed to be pondering something. What the heck was going on in the world? He turned around again and smiled. It hadn't occurred to me. Perhaps only the kind of person you want to be can do what's needed. What's needed? Later. I'll leave you with the nurses. He left with the doctors. Nurses took off the electroencephalograph electrodes from my head. I heard a loud crowd of people cheering. The nurses took other things off me, including a thermometer out of my you-know-what, and brushed my hair. I was still wearing the clothes I had on when I fell in the ocean. I noticed my clothes were stained with some reddish-brown stuff. What's this? I asked. Blood. Peter Blair came back into the room. By now I was sitting in a chair chatting with the nurses. How are you? I'm good. Any nausea? No. Why did he ask that? Where am I? In London. This hospital is on the periphery of the city.
We couldn't bring you into the heart of London. The traffic obstruction would have been horrendous.
Why was I so important? Never mind. I could find out later. Can I go to a hotel or something?
We hold the floor of a new hotel tower for visiting dignitaries. It's yours.
Do they have shops?
They do.
I need fresh clothes, but I don't have any money.
The British nation will gladly pay. We've already spent millions on you.
Everybody laughed at that. Something else that made no sense. I could find out about it later. I need something to eat. They didn't feed me my last day.
The nurses will get you something.
He left again, and the nurses got me some fish and chips. Blair came back.
How is your stomach taking the food?
Fine. That's the second time you've asked that.
The doctors warned me you might revive briefly, but soon sicken and die. It would be like radiation sickness. First nausea within the hour, then rapid deterioration. It can't be stopped. I'm glad it didn't happen.
What? More mysteries to find out later. Can I go to the hotel now?
Of course. But first, would you mind coming upstairs to the sunroom and let television cameras see you? Your family will see you.
Sure. Having Steve and my parents see it that I was alive was too good to resist. The PM and I left the room. The PM's people followed as we walked towards the center of the building, with greatly excited hospital staff and visitors cheering. There was a staircase near the front entrance. We went up to the second floor and walked to a patient lounge, which had observation windows on 3 sides. This hospital was on the outskirts of London, with plenty of open space in front. Peter Blair guided me to the center window. A crowd of people, large enough to fill a dozen NFL stadiums, waited. In a moment, they spotted me and cheered. 500,000 people were cheering for me. I felt a thrill going up and down my spine. I was not used to this kind of attention and had no set of responses like a seasoned celebrity would. I stared out at them, amazed that they would find me so interesting. I was in my usual youthful situation of wondering what was going on. Why are they here? I asked the PM.
It took 14 hours to revive you. People like that. The suspense, you know.
Television camera crews had claimed the spaces closest to the hospital and aimed their cameras at me. The world saw me standing in my blood-soaked clothes. People held up painted signs. "Hello! Welcome! And come to Ireland!" were typical comments. One woman held up a sign that read, "Save us!" Save us? What's that about?
The wind is stopping everywhere.
Where's everywhere?
All over the world.
I looked and saw the spherical cotton ball clouds that form when there's no wind. They weren't moving at all. They just hung there. It was like looking at a postcard. What does it mean? I asked.
No wind means no rain and no food.
How bad will it get?
We may see the whole world starve to death.
The television cameras must have taken close-ups of my face. The crowd became silent as they waited to see if I lost it. How will it happen?
Only the coastlines will have enough rain to grow a few crops. The inland areas will turn to desert. Europe and the United States can survive for 2 years by marshalling all their resources. Every square inch of the coasts will be cultivated. Unfortunately, the rest of the world can't do this. We'll lose 1 billion people in the first year. Beyond 2 years, our economies totally collapse. Everybody abandons their jobs. All social structures break down. It's every man for himself. All animals are slaughtered for food. With birds extinct, the insects will multiply 1,000 times, spreading uncontrollable epidemics. In 5 years, there will be few of us left. The world is dying.
Horrible! Inconceivable! And what was I supposed to do about this mess? I didn't even know what happened. The crowd was absolutely still. They knew I'd just learned the facts of life, and my reaction showed I didn't know what to do. This unimaginable horror was likely to be their future. No wonder they came here to see me.
I walked inside and stopped at a nurse's station. Blair followed and stood next to me. He was the world's lifeline to me now, if that meant anything. He had to suspect by now that I didn't know what to do with the wind situation. Somehow he would have to pull a miracle out of me.
I feel like running away, I said. You couldn't stop me.
I know we couldn't.
All I wanted to do was be a high school math teacher.
You can teach millions something more important. When the world falls apart around us, we look within ourselves and find ourselves. Show us what's within you. I had no response to that. How did I know what was within me? Nothing could have prepared me for this kind of challenge. The world waits to hear you. Would you agree to speak with me on television? The topic is Hal.
The government hasn't figured out Hal after 8 years. You want me to do it in 1 day?
Not 1 day. We must begin.
I need to see everything that happened in the last 2 weeks.
Agreed. I'll speak to the BBC. They'll put together a montage for you.
I'll need to see it in the exact sequence that happened to guess what Hal was thinking.
Agreed. We'll see his thinking.
This is what I was afraid of. If I knew my secret came out, people would never let me alone. I never wanted to be famous. I don't want television cameras in my face. I just want to live privately. Is there anything wrong with that?
There isn't. We'll shelter you as much as possible. Shall we go to the hotel?
Sure. It won't take me long to pack.
He laughed. I had nothing but the clothes on my back. London's skyscraper district had a new 60-story hotel with 2,000 rooms and every amenity. We arrived unexpected. A crowd gathered immediately as we walked to the desk. Miss Hartley needs a diplomatic room on the government floor, the PM announced. The desk clerk signaled the young female hotel worker to follow. We went up to the 58th floor. My room was a suite with 2 bedrooms, a separate sitting room, and a kitchenette. It was far better than any hotel I'd stayed in before. The desk clerk, who also went up with us, said, "Nancy will attend to you this evening." Nancy was the hotel worker. "At your service, Mum," she said to me, very excited about the assignment. The men left us 2 girls alone. Blair said it would take some time for the BBC to put together the montage. There was a lot of film to edit. I turned on television, and of course most channels were talking about me. I stumbled upon a channel that was showing the wedding of Prince William and Kate Middleton. "That happened a long time ago," I said to Nancy. "Why are they showing it now?" "People need cheering up. It's been a horrible week. Royal weddings are rare and glorious. They have been showing it all week." "Well, yeah, America had no royal weddings. Just the trash weddings of tabloid celebrities, if anybody cared." I watched the highlights of the wedding. The commentators gave much related information. I especially noticed how nervous Kate was. After seeing everything, I turned to a priority. "I need some clothes. These are 2 weeks old. I must smell like hell." While the world's people waited to hear whether their death sentence was commuted, Nancy and I went shopping. A swarm of security people hastily summoned by Blair kept the curious away. I selected 4 skirt and jacket outfits, lots of casual clothes, accessories, underwear, and every kind of personal item. I broke a world speed record doing all of this in 110 minutes. The PM was alerted when I returned to my suite. He came over right away, but I had jumped in the shower when Nancy let him in the room. He waited patiently for half an hour. I came out in a flattering Irish green dress. "A tribute to my ancestors," I said with a smile. My hair was still damp and a mess, but already expanding out to that mane that had startled many. "Very lovely," the PM said. "I presented the final selection of the montage being prepared for you. It will begin playing in a few minutes. After it's done, could we appear on air 20 minutes later?" "Sure." "Excellent. I'll arrange it. Very lovely." He repeated and left. He looked encouraged by my cooperation.
The phone rang. With 1,000,000 people wanting to talk to me, there could only be one person who got through. "That has to be my husband," I said to Nancy. "Tell him we can't talk on the phone. People are listening. Tell him no matter what I say tonight, I can change my mind tomorrow." The first person to speak on the BBC montage was an anchorman who had recorded his comments in a documentary on an earlier date.
United States Navy Admiral Rooke was ordered to the White House to meet the president. President Martin told him sometimes a person was a clear and present danger to the United States, but could not be neutralized by ordinary rules of law. What did the admiral think was done with such people? The admiral said he had no idea. The president said such a person was eliminated. One person could not be allowed to endanger 300 million Americans. The admiral was told such a person was a problem now. A plane was being prepared with an atom bomb. Would the admiral cooperate in the launching of the plane from his ship, the U.S. carrier Ronald Reagan? The admiral asked why the person was being executed in this extreme manner. He was told the president would explain it on television immediately after the bomb was detonated. Other countries would detect it. The president had to explain it. Would the admiral cooperate? He said he would, but he didn't like it. The president responded nobody was enjoying the operation. But if the admiral was ordered to launch a nuclear missile to kill 1,000,000 people, he would do it. The admiral agreed to bring the Ronald Reagan around South America to the Atlantic for the operation. An F-22 Raptor was prepared with a bomb and remote control and loaded on the admiral's ship. Then it was a matter of waiting for an opportunity to abduct Mrs. Hartley. The next person to speak in the BBC montage was another announcer. Theresa Hartley was seized from her car on Saturday, June 12th, and put in a helicopter. The witnesses who had seen Theresa Hartley's car forced to stop and the government men forcing her into the van at gunpoint called 911 to report a kidnapping. The police arrived in 5 minutes and were astonished at the witnesses' story. Usually a kidnapping was committed by 1 or 2 men. This time 6 kidnappers were seen and there had to be at least 1 more in the van. The police wasted no time in calling the FBI. Kidnapping was a federal offense in America. Investigation of kidnappings must include all the states. 2 FBI agents, each with an assistant, came over from Boston. They listened to the strange story and in turn questioned the witnesses. This could not be the act of criminals. A quick check showed Theresa's family had no ransom money to speak of. The kidnappers sounded like federal agents. Who were they? Who were those people in the numerous cars rushing past the scene minutes later? Why was Theresa Hartley so important? Mystery upon mystery upon mystery. One agent said, if this was a federal, and we uncover it, it will make Watergate look like a tea party. Steve Hartley was called into the police station to meet the FBI men and was questioned about his wife's friends and routines. He could give no reason why Theresa would be kidnapped. After a few questions about her activity, which revealed nothing, Mr. Hartley was asked if she had disk space on the Boston College computer system. Yes, she did, he told them. Thereupon, the FBI and Steve Hartley went to Boston College. A computer center technician there had the password to Mrs. Hartley's files. They found one called Mission Impossible. It was 260 pages of mathematical jargon, completely incomprehensible to anyone but a mathematician. 4 math professors were called in to examine the file. They could not understand what it was for. Mrs. Hartley used many abbreviations and terms without definitions. If she were intending to hide her work's purpose, she did very well. The computer tech suggested the file be shared with everybody on Boston College campus. Somebody might know what this was for. It brought no response. Theresa Hartley had been working alone. The BBC montage did not have information about my odyssey on the helicopter and the twin-engine prop plane to the characters. But I knew all about that. Maybe they left it out for that reason. The next part was a video of President Martin on television. My fellow Americans, a short time ago, the U.S. exploded a small atomic bomb in the atmosphere over the South Atlantic. It was scheduled. It was a one-time event and will not be repeated. In an attempt to calm world fears, I will immediately and fully disclose the reasons for this operation. 15 years ago, an alien entity entered Earth. It disappeared and could not be found for 7 years. 8 years ago, it associated itself with an American named Theresa Sullivan. We observed her. The alien interacted with her, influencing her physical activity. She could not, nor would not, explain what the alien was. We were patient, but this situation could not be tolerated indefinitely. We could not wait while this alien was as likely to be involved with hostile activities as friendly. It made no announcement to us in 15 years, which we considered an unfriendly relationship. Therefore, we destroyed it with an atomic bomb. Sadly, this young woman had to be sacrificed. The alien remained with her at all times. We could not destroy the alien without destroying her too. We put her on a plane with the bomb. My fellow Americans, we took this action after careful deliberation. When we are at war, we send thousands of soldiers to their deaths. This was the loss of one person to eliminate a potential threat greater than any war. She was told what would be done. She went to her death bravely with no resistance. Her courage was magnificent. She gave credit to the human spirit. There is no medal designated for courageous conduct in this kind of situation. But let me console her family by saying her dignified and brave sacrifice did more good for the world than any Medal of Honor winner. We offer thanks from a generous nation.
I imagine Steve and my parents were crushed by this news. How horrible it must have been to learn I'd been vaporized out of existence. Nothing left behind. No body to bury. Not a trace to mourn over. No known place at which to drop a flower wreath on the water. It was as if I had never existed. Terrible. Then came another shock for the world. There were 6,000 sailors on Ronald Reagan. They could not be kept silent, and no effort was made to shut them up. They had cell phones connected to a satellite. That Sunday night, information was leaking out. The BBC had the phone call of a sailor who said I was bailed out of the plane. Even worse than this news, they had hidden a microphone in the collar of my jumpsuit. That's why they gave me the jumpsuit. They were listening to me all the time.
She got out of the plane somehow. They heard her breathing after the bomb went off. She fell for 3.5 minutes. When she was out in the cold water, she screamed her head off. But she never said a word. She was tough. Everybody was crying.
What must Steve have felt when he heard this? My parents must have gone nuts. I cried to think about it. The BBC hurried along. The next presentation was a Senate hearing about the A-bomb explosion. The Senate Armed Services Committee convened on Tuesday morning. The BBC had videos of this hearing for me to watch. The first witness was the director of the little-known Defense Intelligence Agency. He talked about how his watchers had been keeping an eye on me since I was 10 years old. She claimed the alien jumped out her from a fox. We still don't know if this was true or a little girl's imagination. We do know something remarkable happened to her. After describing how I came to their attention, he testified there had been up to 400 people at a time assigned to watching me. He explained it was very difficult to follow someone for years without being detected. People had to be frequently changed or be noticed. Then he got to the part that I found most interesting.
The most difficult kind of tailing is following somebody around a college campus. A stranger is easily recognized, but we knew her schedule and where she would be every hour. We'd have somebody walk by her at a distance of 100 feet to confirm her movements, except that she might not arrive somewhere exactly at the same time every day, and we had to keep our people moving. We'd send 20 or more people to a spot in 30-second intervals. 1 or 2 of them would spot her. All these people walked around the college and were never noticed. Actually, they were, but never by the students. The first week Theresa was in BC, the campus police saw 2 of them and took them down to the station. Theresa Hartley was called in. She told them to call up their supervisor, who called me, and I called the president. The president called the campus police and told them to keep it quiet. We made an agreement with the police. We told them our people were there to protect, it would matter of national security. We told them no more than that. All our people had the DIA credentials. The police accepted them. That seems unusual. They're accepting your people's invasion. Not at all. We pointed out to the police that our agents would be on the lookout for suspicious characters. They were helping the campus police. Their two forces were very friendly about it. And did none of these hundreds of watchers tell the police why they were watching Theresa Hartley? They didn't know. They were told not to speculate. That's incredible. At least one of them should have talked to the press. That's the interesting part, Senator. If we had only 20 watchers, some of them would think that the taxpayer money was being wasted on something not that important. But since we had up to 400 watchers, they believed this operation was a life or death matter for the United States. None of them broke rank. How much did this surveillance cost over 8 years? Approximately $500 million.
There wasn't much more for the DIA director to say, except that he hadn't known about President Martin's operation. So Jan Struthers was not a part of it. The director was soon dismissed. The next witness was the CIA director. It was his men that had taken me to the carrier. He said that the Defense Intelligence Agency had briefed him about the alien and Theresa Hartley 4 months ago. Then the president ordered him to organize a team of agents to abduct me and bring me to the aircraft carrier. The director said it had been difficult to assemble a team. Most men refused to participate.
But you had no qualms, sir? Asked the chairman. Of course I did. But I tended to agree with the president. The situation could not be ignored. Were we in danger? Who could know, Senator? Can you tell me whether or not we are in danger now? We have learned she escaped the plane. How could that happen? We don't know. Could she open the canopy? No. It was locked down. The release was disabled. 2 sailors at the scene will testify to that. Could she break it open? Impossible. There's a 3/4-inch sheet of high tensile strength plastic. Unbreakable. Bullets bounce off it. Could she push it out? Not possible. It was held in by many steel pins. An elephant couldn't push it out. How did she live through the fall? There are cases of people falling into water from great heights and surviving. It's rare. The mistake people make is thinking they should enter the water head first or feet first. Wrong. That'll kill you. You need to go in spread out horizontally to let the entire body absorb the shock. It happened recently. An American woman fell 1,500 feet into a lake when her parachute backpack failed to open. She suffered no injuries.
How far did Theresa Hartley fall?
The canopy opened at 57,900 feet. That's 11 miles. It took 3.5 minutes to reach the water.
Why did she scream in the water?
It was partly panic. All jumpers scream. But she never made a sound on the way down. We can't explain that.
What about the cold water?
Definitely painful. Mostly in the bones of the extremities. It's not likely they show you in the movies.
Do you have a recording of the woman?
There was one. Admiral Rook threw it in the ocean.
Just as well, said the chairman. The BBC and the committee milked this witness for 1.5 hours. They asked the most detailed questions about things that were not important. The BBC said this was probably of no interest to me, and it was all skipped. The hearing broke for a late lunch, and a committee aide told Steve he would be called to testify at 2 o'clock. Steve's testimony had been anxiously awaited. Who better to tell the world what I had been doing with the alien than my husband? He was sworn in. The committee began on an apologetic note. We know you were called in quickly during a difficult time. We hope you understand how urgently we need you to know about the recent event. Steve waved his hand without saying anything. Now then, sir, can you tell us what your wife said about the alien?
She said nothing about it.
A groan of surprise and disappointment arose from the crowd. Nothing.
She never told you anything? Nothing. Not a word. Did she give hints that you didn't understand at the time? No. Did she talk about the possibility of aliens? No. Are you saying you knew and suspected nothing? That's what I'm saying.
The committee chairman didn't know what else to say. He looked from left to right, offering other committee members a chance to jump in. None of them would touch this one.
Well, sir, we are very surprised. Is there anything you want to say? Yes. Theresa hasn't been dead for 48 hours, and I have 8 messages from Hollywood offering to make a movie about her. There won't be any movie. People like to see somebody get in trouble. I have bad news for you. Theresa never got in trouble. She was perfect in every way. Live with it. That's a remarkable assessment. Theresa was a remarkable person. She became an adult before she became a woman. Other girls worried about diets and hairstyles. She worried about being the mediator between an alien and the world. That's what her major and Mission Impossible file were about. Theresa was different from the rest of us. We won't see her kind again.
The chairman obviously thought it was time to get rid of this witness.
Thank you for coming in, sir.
Steve got up automatically and walked to the door with swarms of reporters hounding him as he walked from the Senate building office to a government car. He went back to his hotel room. The next section of the montage was about early Wednesday morning. The Ronald Reagan had arrived in Florida during the night. That young female officer who made a video of my last words was 26-year-old Lieutenant Junior Grade Virginia Connor, who was sure to be remembered. The BBC showed her video. I was waiting on the Ronald Reagan deck while the jet fighter was being brought into place. Yours truly was on the screen with my wild mane of hair blowing in the wind. Connor's voice was heard asking if I had anything to say. This is the most stupid thing ever done. I'm glad I won't be here to see what happens. Connor asked if that was all I had to say. If people grieve your passing, rejoice in the good you did, and die like a hero going home. I feel good about who I was. I hoped Steve and my parents got some comfort from that. The screen changed to 4 talking heads on an American news talk show who debated the meaning of my remarks. What did I mean by something happening? Did I know what it was? Was I making it happen? Was it serious? Who would be affected? Could it be stopped? Their discussion was futile at this point. The video was bad news for President Martin. Now they'll make a movie about her, the talking heads agreed. The next hearing witness was a big surprise. My priest, Father Richard Donati, was extensively documented in the files on me maintained by the DIA. He was called in as a witness. He walked into the Senate office building chamber, carrying a heavy briefcase, and was sworn in. Now, Father, began the chairman, you have previously advised this committee by phone that as Theresa Hartley's priest, you cannot discuss her character except in general terms known to her acquaintances. What was she like? Everybody will tell you she was a good girl, a brilliant girl, the pride and joy of her family. If this alien's arrival was an inevitable event in the natural world, God saw to it associated itself with an exceptional girl. For what purpose, Father? That remains a mystery. We deal with many mysteries in my line of work. We wait for answers with trust. How long have you known her? 8 years. She first came to the rectory when she was 10. Our records show you managed to be assigned to her parish church for those 8 years. It is the norm for priests to be reassigned every 2 or 3 years. Was this a coincidence? It was arranged by Cardinal Rook. The Holy Father was interested in her case and wanted me to stay close to her. It was the Holy Father who arranged her full scholarship at Boston College.
Theresa couldn't turn that down. He wanted her to go to BC because it's rigidly Catholic? It isn't rigidly Catholic. 1/3 of its students are non-Catholics from all over the world. If you want to operate a large, diverse university, you can't do it all with a heavy hand. It was important for Theresa to get a truly worldly educational experience. She might have done some role dealing with the alien in the name of humanity. She had to have wisdom. How did the Holy Father become interested in her? Cardinal Rook and I told him about how Theresa was being followed by government watchers. We saw them ourselves. We were sure she wasn't possessed. The government watchers proved her story about Hal. Hal? That's what she called him. It's from a movie you probably remember. What did she say about Hal? Not much. She knew nothing about him. Did you have contact with her watchers, as they're called? Only once. A woman followed her to the rectory. She didn't give her name. What did this woman tell you? Nothing, except that many people were watching Theresa. For what reason? She didn't say. She assumed I knew. You only had Theresa's word there was a Hal. That's correct. How did you become convinced there was a Hal? Father Donati opened his briefcase and took out 3 playground horseshoes which had bent into twisted shapes. Certain statements have been made in this hearing about how Theresa got out of the plane. Do you think anybody could bend one of these, Senator? I doubt it. Father Donati stacked the 3 horseshoes together. Despite their foot twists, they fit precisely on top of each other. When Theresa was 10 years old, I watched her bend all 3 at once. She did even more amazing feats of strength for Cardinal Rook and myself. She could hold a heavy book in one hand and squeeze until her fingertips pieced the book from cover to cover. There seemed to be no limit to her strength. She was a baseball pitcher in high school. She could have been an NFL quarterback and scored a touchdown on every play. Are you implying she had enough strength to push out the canopy? With Hal's power, but her own initiative. Yes. The room was silent. Father Donati enjoyed watching the bug-eyed expressions on the committee's faces. I'll bet no one was more surprised than Steve. All that time I had seemed to have the delicacy of a petite female. I could have broken his back with a single blow. The priest had an afterthought. When she was abducted, she must have known she could fight her way out. She could have killed everybody around her. She went to her death without a fight. She's a martyr. I think God's purpose in choosing her was to show how there are good people, and we are worth saving. The chairman had the political savvy to give this idea a respectful moment of silence. It was the finest thing that could be said about a person. He couldn't fail to note the sad expression on people's faces. How did she explain the super strength, Father? She couldn't. It was as much a mystery to her as us. What else could she do? She could throw things with perfect accuracy. She threw coins into a glass 20 feet away and never missed. Anything else? That's it. Did she communicate with Hal? She always denied there was any communication, but clearly they were aware of each other. Clearly, yes. Well, Father, this has been the strangest story I've ever heard. Have we all lost our minds? I hope not. He grinned. The BBC talked about the next development in this weird week. A small freighter carrying grain from Argentina to Africa was 900 miles out to sea. The captain and his first mate were looking out the water. The wind had noted to die out during the night. Now there was a dead calm. The water was motionless. A bridge video cam had recorded these 2 men's brief exchange. In words that were much discussed, the first mate asked, "You ever see a calm sea like this?" "Not this time of year." The small streamer was crossing the area where I'd fallen from the fighter jet. Word got out quickly. Commercial airplanes passing over the area were asked to note the location and the extent of the calm seas.
It appeared that the calm area was spreading out at 18 miles an hour on the edge, broadening the width of the area 36 miles per hour. It was already thousands of miles wide. Soon it would lock up the entire Earth's weather pattern and stop the wind everywhere. Without wind, there was no way for the water vapor from the oceans to get to land fast enough to provide the rain needed to grow anything. World famine would follow. There was no way to prevent it. The BBC said Prime Minister Peter Blair sent ships to the South Atlantic to look for me. This was all considered the most ridiculous naval mission of all time. Blair's folly, said the newspaper headlines. Blair's search for the Holy Grail. Anybody who had been to sea knew the impossibility of finding a body in that vast nothingness, even if it was floating on the surface. The next part of the BBC program was a real shock. That Friday night, President Martin suddenly resigned in the middle of the night and left the White House to go to his Indiana home. The Secretary of Defense was rushed to the White House because, according to the two-man rule, he had to confirm the president's identity before the nuclear missile launch codes could be activated. But for an hour, the United States had no president, while Vice President Veronica Stinson was asleep and unaware. Did I have any responsibility for this mess? For not telling people about Hal when I was 10? You decide.
Oh my God, I can see why this took Crimson so long. I know I reference his stuff. When he said he had such a hard time getting through these chapters, I feel it on a personal level now. If nothing else, I am now guaranteed, eventually, I am going to make a bloopers reel of this. 'Cause heaven knows there are quite a few. I apologize for any audio issues you may or may not have heard. I was moving around and I took a break because I just couldn't sit down through this. And then I lost my recording hoodie because the acoustics in my room suck. I will always try, and if nothing else, at least if the audio quality dips, it now matches the book quality. Once again, before I leave, I highly recommend all of you check out Mr. Monical. I cannot thank him enough for the absolutely gorgeous artwork he did for me. And I got a chance to talk to him and hang out for a bit. He is a really cool dude. Check out his commissions page, check out his Twitter, his whatever. He is good. Thank you again. That being said, I promise I will try and get Chapter 6 out sooner. It may be the death of my sanity, but I will try. I appreciate all your guys' patience while you wait for these. I know it's not fun to wait. And I have lost any right to complain to my friends about my favorite creators taking forever on their series, because I'm like, well, why can't they get the next part out? I have no right to say that anymore. Anyway, I've been rambling long enough. I will see you guys for the next chapter, and until then, I hope you all have a great night. Bye!